The Crash Course Podcast is brought to you in part by DerbyParts.com, Smashmasters, Derby Parts, and Derby Inc. Magazine. Live it, breathe it, be it, Derby Inc. This is the Crash Course Demolition Derby Podcast, recorded live at the FingerLinks1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt.
Good afternoon, good evening, good day. Thanks for joining us here on Crash Course number 14. Presented by, for the first time, and for the next 7 months, going to be presented by the Keystone Nationals in Brookville, Pennsylvania.
Nice.
That's cool. That's pretty cool. We got some new logos out there. We got Steve Bucknam joining us on the live chat. I see you've moved again a little bit. We'll have to reset that. We also got Josh Decker here. Josh putting on a smiling face, even though he is just boiling inside. And then we've got Brian Tompkins also joining us here in studio. Boy, it was a lot of fun here as we were getting ready to go with this episode. We got Brandon Hayes from out in Illinois, and hopefully Sean Peace from out in Washington going to join us a little bit later on, talking a little bit about where Demolition Derby was before we got to where we are right now. The big thing that really brought the country together was the IDDA, and from there, everything evolved. We ended up mushrooming that into the message board. So there's all sorts of individual dedicated message boards in different parts of the country. Then from there, we got We Crash, which was bringing everybody together again in one spot. Then that broke up and then fractured all off after there was a couple individuals that wanted to make that their own. I think it was Sam and Wade that did that, actually. That were involved with that. And
I don't remember exactly.
And then We Crash came back as free, and Facebook sort of filled in a big void there too. So got a lot to talk about where we were and where we're going. I'm kind of looking forward to the conversation, and we're going to be getting Brandon Hayes here on the line here in just a second. I know someone who was sitting on the board of directors right up until everything went down and out and everything. I don't know if it's fair to say that it disappeared, but certainly isn't around anymore. It was the IDDA, and there is Steve Bucknam. He was on the board with them. Steve, thanks for joining us again on the Skype hotline.
Hey, glad to be here. I appreciate you guys.
I love the backdrop.
Keep me around.
I love the backdrop. That's so cool.
Yeah, I drew that in the hours leading up to the show.
Is that dry erase marker on the wall?
The IDDA, because there's so many young drivers that are getting into the sport right now that have no idea that it even existed. And there's so much actually happening in the sport right now that we're all, kind of ideas and kind of children, so to speak, of the IDDA. And it's kind of cool to see that stuff coming to pass now.
I mean, it's one of those things that you've had the opportunity to run all over the place, tied in with IDDA. You ran Brookville in 2003, but before that you were in Minnesota. You've run in Washington. You've run in Illinois. Where else have you had the opportunity to drive? Virginia's another one. Is where you met Mark Wolf.
Yeah, I actually was just going to go down and watch the Derby down there in Virginia to help support it however I could, and they needed an announcer, and I had actually announced a couple of my own shows, heats I should say. I'll get into that in a second, but I announced a couple of heats at Cayuga, Indiana, prior to that. So Sam asked me if I could do the announcing for the Virginia show. And that was like my first real full announcing gig. That was, 2004. And now look where I am. Thanks to IDDA, I mean, I was an announcer in Virginia. I scouted out the location for the IDDA Derby that we had in Nebraska. I ran the Derby in Brookville, Pennsylvania, 2003. I ran a Derby in Yorktown, Indiana. I don't remember what year that was, but 2003, 2004. And I've been to a lot of cool places. I went to Washington State and derbied out there because I met Sean Pease through the IDDA. We became friends online, and he invited me out to his place to go run a car at his home track, which was Evergreen Speedway in Monroe, Washington. And then 2 years later, I was able to have him come out to New Hampshire, and he ran a car out at my home track, which at the time was the Hopkinton State Fair here in New Hampshire. So it was, it's been a cool experience.
And how did IDDA drivers keep in touch? I mean, how did you guys do it? Was it email? I mean, that's sort of late '90s is when all that really started to take off. For you guys, was it email? Did you have message boards at that point, or were you actually just using post stamps and envelopes?
it we were carving stuff on stone tablets.
Well, you've been around long enough where I could understand that.
Smoke signals.
It started off as an email digest, which a lot of the younger kids that are online right now probably won't even know what that is. But this guy named John Brophy and this girl Vicky, they started the IDDA. They had the idea, and it was basically just a website that had some information about New York demolition derbies that John was part of, and it had a sign up for email digest, and you could sign up and you could just send in a question or whatever you wanted to put in there, and they'd get collected throughout the day, and then every day they would send out a mass digest email. And it's basically like clicking on a forum today and reading down through the posts, but it wasn't instantaneous. You had to wait for your digest to come in every day. So there was a lot of days spent, anxiously waiting to see what someone had to say, or if someone answered your question about a certain car. And some days you get, a 4 or 5 page long digest. Other days you get like 3 posts because someone was out building cars and they didn't have time for the computer. So that's how it started.
We're in the process of getting Brandon Hayes on the phone here in just a minute. We'll be able to chat with him too.
And while that was all going on, they started to transition into a forum setup, which is more familiar to people. And then outside of the IDDA, there was a couple of Yahoo groups that were pretty active. Yahoo Groups Demolition Derbies was one of them. There's a couple other ones that were getting pretty big, and people were chatting through the Yahoo groups. And there was a lot of tie-in there. Some people that were, people were on both and getting to know each other that way as well.
Are any of those still active now? Do you know?
I don't even know if Yahoo Groups still exists, to be honest with you.
Yahoo Groups still exists. There's a bunch of places where you can go find out about New Yorkers and live frame Opars.
The big one was Yahoo Groups Demolition Derbies. I was one of the admins on there for a long time, along with another derby guy, Jesse Cushway, who's up in Michigan. A lot of people know him as Demo Car 82. Mm-hmm. And when I started becoming more involved with the IDDA, I actually stepped away from the Yahoo group because at the time, I believed that it was kind of like factioning off the internet side of it, and I was trying to kind of get everybody to come all together in one place on the IDDA, so I stepped away from the Yahoo group. But Jesse kept that going, and they were both great resources.
Another guy that was active with the IDDA, Brandon Hayes, joining us on the line. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, pleased to be here.
Hey, thanks a lot for joining us. Tell us a little bit about some of your experience out there running with the IDDA program and where some of your travels took you.
Well, let's see. I first found the IDDA, I'm trying to think how far back. Maybe 99, 2000, somewhere around. I think it might have been 99 or 2000. I can't remember. But when I first got started in sport, I was just trying to, find information about it, find out who else was doing it, how to, tips on building and whatnot. And, I just kind of came up on the digest and became a member. And like I said, we just got it was like the little thing you look forward to every day. Open up your email, and there's the IDDA digest every day. So that was kind of where everything started.
And where did you have the opportunity to run with IDDA? Did you just stay local in your neck of the woods, or did you branch out to some of the other states?
The one IDDA event I did run was, I believe, in 2001 in Yorktown, Indiana. I believe just outside of Muncie, which I believe that's where I met first. That should have been the first time I met with Steve way back when. So I think as far as I know, it was the first new Iron Derby that I know of. I don't know if there was anything before that. But yeah, it was. And I remember, I was green. It was only my third Derby I even ran, so that was quite a learning experience. And I realized, how much the sport's come along since then, where I was running on an absolute bare bones budget and was so cheap that I forgot to put oil in the damn motor before the Derby and still ended up getting fifth. So that tells you anything, how far the sport's come since then.
Well, I mean, since the IDDA broke up, We Crash has come and gone twice on 2 different occasions. Left and then came back and became sort of a focal point. But in the midst of all that, we've also had Facebook come in and step in sort of a bit of a different role in keeping the Derby community together with the evolution of the different Facebook groups and the Facebook communities you can create. Josh is real active with the United States Demolition Derby. I spend a lot of time in Northeast Demolition Derby, and then we've also got friends that move in and out of the circles, and at Team Kansas, at the Winter Slam, at the Utah Demolition Derby page, the Minnesota Demolition Derby. Frank Van Houten liked a post that I put in the Utah Demolition Derby page, and we live, a matter of miles apart. So it's kind of interesting just to see the way that everything has changed that way. Has that social media stuff helped Demolition Derby? I mean, has it helped it grow, or has it sort of hindered it because now everybody doing stuff, building the cars that were used to be okay as New York style, now everything has to be based on what's going on in the Midwest?
I think it's helped. I mean, when this whole thing started going on, I remember, like you said, back early 2000s, our local show, the closest show to here would be Champaign. And you'd show up, and they would have, about 90 to 100 cars, and maybe 5 cars had a good shot at winning, and everything else is just, cream puff crap, basically. Right. Junk. And now you go to that same show now, there might be 20 cars, and 18 of them have a possibility of winning. You don't have the same... Great point. It's not the same people winning every derby. Yep. You just have a lot higher quality builds, but, where it kind of hinders it, there's not quite as much I would call actual destruction, because everything out there is a tank, basically, now.
Yep.
Chris, Brandon was a Ford guy before Fords were popular in derbies. He was kind of a diehard Ford guy, if I remember right. And it was cool to see him run out there at Yorktown.
Brand, is that true? Are these accusations correct?
Yes.
You were Ford before Ford was cool?
Some people have credited, I'm not trying to brag or nothing, but people have said that I was partially responsible for the whole box Ford revolution that started way back. Like I said, I brought a 83 Lincoln to the IDDA demo, and like I said, I didn't even have oil in the motor until still took fifth in that first new iron, and I don't know, it just kind of...
That's awesome.
You started seeing more box Fords built, and it just kind of went from there.
See that, Josh? There's another celebrity on the show.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
I mean, when the IDDA was in its heyday, was it effective in bringing everybody together? Was it as effective as, when you look back on things, you only remember the good stuff. You remember the positives. It's easy to forget the stuff that didn't work. Was the IDDA as effective of bringing the Derby community together as you guys on the board, Steve, hoped it would be?
Well, yes and no, I think. I think in a lot of ways it did a much better job of bringing people together, because the friendships that were forged through the IDDA were a lot tighter and a lot more personal than I think what a lot of people are dealing with now, like through WeCrash and even on some of the Facebook groups. What is it? This is 13 years later, and I still talk to Brandon every now and then on Facebook. I don't think, honestly, besides a few people and just a few people in my own family, I haven't talked to anybody in for 13 years straight, and we still keep in touch. So in that respect, I think it did a better job than some of the newer stuff as far as bringing people together. But you can't argue with sheer numbers. I mean, with Facebook and all the other avenues out there, so many more people are in touch with people all over the country now, just because of the sheer accessibility of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely true. And the ease of it. Yeah. And why not? Why not? I mean, how great is it to be able to talk to 10 of your friends at the same time about one topic? I mean, that's so cool. Instead of having to call everybody, I mean, back in the day, you'd have to call and say, hey, did you hear what this guy said? Did you hear? We don't have to do that anymore. We all talk about it right on one thread, and I think it is.
And you have it. You have it right here.
Instantly, yeah.
Right
instantly.
Here on your phone. Because nobody leaves home without this anymore.
No.
Yeah, they're all more intelligent than we are, according to their name, their smartphones.
I think maybe, and this might give me a little bit of heat too, is I think maybe a lot of the newer drivers who have entered the sport in this age, they're maybe a little bit spoiled and a little bit entitled. I mean, if they want to know like how to build a 86 Lincoln, they can just go on WeCrash and they can get a step-by-step directions with videos on how to do that. When we first started this whole gig, if we wanted to know how to build a car and we didn't know how to do it ourselves, we posted a question to the digest, and we waited 2 or 3 days for somebody to write back to us.
That's awesome.
And they may or may not, and we had to figure it out on our own.
And that's like, I think a lot of kids, when I started, and we started in this area here, there was one guy that was, pretty good. He was one of the few guys in the area that could compete with, there was a family out of Chemung that people may have not have heard of called the Benjamins. And they pretty much won every time they came to Waterloo. And, we always said they were cheating because that was the easy way out. We couldn't say, hey, they just build a better car and they can drive better.
I was going to say they're better drivers. Also, they've driven 100 times up to your one.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just easier to say they were cheating. Yep. But we didn't have guys around here. There wasn't guys around here that we could talk to, to find stuff out. So, we would,
Well, if you wanted to find anything out about those cars, you could always go to Wix and ask the lumberyard, because there was that one car that had the 4x4 blocks and the quarter panel. And that was, I don't know if you're going to find that on the digest either.
And, but, and that was the thing. We didn't, it was all trial and error for us. Hey, what would happen if we did this? And we'd try it. And we, back then we were all running more shows. I'd run, the 3 local county fairs, and then I'd run after local races at Canandaigua or Weed Sport. But still, it was a lot of trial and error before you would learn something.
And you would junk a lot of cars learning something.
Absolutely. But
that's all you had to do. You just have to just run car. Yeah. But you still have to run car. For any 17-year-old that thinks he's going to just read We Crash and go out there and win derbies, it's not that easy.
But you know what, though? If you think about it,
it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. You think about it, though. Some of these kids and young adults whose parents are won't cut the string.
The umbilical cord.
Yeah, mommy, I need this, daddy, I need that, and they're buying them all this stuff. It didn't used to be like that.
Okay, I agree with that, but I think that you have to go out there and run a lot of times.
Absolutely.
If you don't have the seat time, there's just so many mistakes that can be made in the pit that you can't build outside the pit. There's just so many lessons to be learned inside that pit. But also, I think it's good for the sport, because think of all the great drivers, like you're saying, in every area. North and Carolinas, everywhere. Yep. There's great guys.
Yep.
All I think this did is brought the gap between guys that aren't that great or the junk cars. I do think it just brought the gap closer together. The great guys, the guys that were great, are still good. They had to step it up a little bit. They had to spend a little bit more money, but they're still the guys that are in the money majority of the time.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So I think it was good for the sport because it just made the show better.
I agree. I just think it's easier now for kids getting involved, to find out what the trick is to do this, and how do you make a square back wagon tough, or stuff like that.
But I think that needs to be done in the sport right now.
Agree.
Because right now it's so hard to jump in and say, you look at some of these local guys that got 20 cars out back. That's intimidating. But for a kid to say, all right, you know what, I can go buy a $400 Vic and I can compete with those guys. That's what you need. If you need everybody looking at a derby saying, I could never do this, we'll never have any people getting in the sport.
They have to have the sense that they have the ability to compete.
Yes.
You have to have the sense that
and we don't want to scare everybody off.
Brandon, when those questions would come across asking how to do this or how to do that, would you be inclined to throw an answer out there to that, or would you keep that information sort of to yourself, being somebody that was one of the first one to tinker with the box Fords?
I basically just gave out as much information as I possibly could. I did a few things that worked decent that I've now seen, in retrospect, didn't work so great. I think it was one of the first things I was doing. I think I was flipping the front shocks up to the mounts upside down and running the front bumper real high.
Yeah, I used to do
now
that.
It really didn't work too well. Now it's they're running as low as possible, tilted frame, and it's all trial and error. But I tried to help as many people out as I could because, for one, I like seeing more Fords out there winning.
Sure.
I kind of came in. I was just sick of it was always Impalas winning everything. The occasional New Yorker. I know you guys are Mopar guys, but the occasional New Yorker.
No secret.
There's a few places still let subframes run around here. Not very many places, but usually it was just your Impalas and New Yorkers, and that was about it. So anyway, any information I learned from the box scores I spread it.
That's the right way to be about it. I mean,
Absolutely.
Well, that's all I was trying to do earlier. Now you're still sitting over there seething.
no, you pissed me off. You made me mad. No, I think that's great. You got to be out there. Can I ask Brandon a quick question? Way out there, Brandon, when was the first time that you ever learned about tilting? Or I heard a story of where tilting came from, and I believe it might be true. I want to know, where did you hear about it, or when did you start seeing that become the norm out there?
The whole tilting thing, because I hadn't even heard of it. I'm trying to think when the first time I even ran across it. I don't think I even ran across it when I officiated. But I think the first time I seen the whole tilting thing was on Weed Crash. I heard they were like doing it out in Ohio or something. Mm-hmm. But so I'm like, okay, how do we do this? And because here I know my cousin still runs, and he was, that was the problem we were having was getting, because like, you start hitting with the front a whole lot, then your front tires get up into the crush boxes.
Right.
And I think that's probably where it really started the tilting by, I would assume started from, because people were having issues with tires hitting the crush boxes, at least in the 88 and olders or whatever, or non-gusset frames.
Right. Yeah, I've heard a story from a guy in Ohio that might be the creator of it, and I'm going to let him tell the story when he gets on here someday, but I just wanted to hear out that way, because I really didn't hear about it until not that many years ago. Yeah, I wondered out your ways have been going for a long time.
Do I know? Sorry.
I don't know if they'd been doing it a long time out your way. We think like Illinois, Indiana, Ohio is kind of all building the same, but you're saying not so much.
Ohio's a world of its own, really. I mean, the more traveling that we've done, it just seems that Ohio is more and more of this hub. Epicenter. Yeah, this hub that sort of does their own thing.
Last night I was bored, and I was looking through some old DVDs.
You didn't have to work?
Not until January 2nd. And don't hate. And I found an old Buckeye Bash, and it was, I don't even remember what year it was, but I mean, they were leafing 225s and, all the stuff that we've just got to doing in the last couple of years, they were doing, 12 years ago.
Right.
I mean, they're definitely seem to be on the, on the forward part of the curve as far as double building.
Steve, what was the link you sent me earlier on Angel Fire?
That's just like a screen capture of what the old IDDA front page used to look like. That was the front page. Brian, you talk about that Buckeye Bash. I mean, there's not a whole
Steve
lot.
announced there.
No, I didn't. No, I did not.
That was a good guess.
I was for a guy out of Virginia, though, a friend of Mark Wolf's, a guy named Gary. We called him Crazy Gary. He brought a Malibu to the Buckeye Bash the first year, and he was so dedicated to coming and running. He was pretty much a rookie. One of the first derbies he ever ran was a IDDA Derby in Pennsylvania at Brookville. Then he came to the Buckeye Bash with this Malibu. He showed up the night before, and it was only like half built. But he brought his truck with a welder and everything else on it, and a bunch of guys got together in the hotel parking lot and helped him finish his car up so it'd be ready for the next day.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
I would do that. You talk about all the stuff you see going on with the sport, and there's not a lot that's out there right now that wasn't done first by the IDDA. I mean, big money derbies, they did the Buckeye Bash, $30,000 purse. That Sam Dargo, I think he mortgaged his house to pay for it, and every dime got paid. Demolition Derby DVDs. IDDA got together with a company called Cinema Works. They put out a whole series of DVDs. That's the Havoc in the Heartland series.
So you watched?
Yep, that's what I was watching. Was the Cinema Works DVDs.
That's cool.
Right now, there's a big thing kind of going around Facebook. It's Demolition Derby Ambassadors Program. I don't know a whole lot about it.
Demolition Derby League, DDL.
I do know that they own the derbypro.com website.
Were you ever a DDL? URL? Were you ever a DDL ambassador?
No.
I was. In your face, Steve.
There you go.
I did it first. Steve.
That's the only thing.
That might actually be owned by somebody that used to be in the IDDA.
Yeah, I know. I was pretty much waiting for that.
I have an idea of who it might be, actually, but
the guy that was running it when I was tied up in that a little bit a couple of years back was he went by the name Dudley Disastro, and I never really got his real name.
Dudley
Disastro.
Sounds like somebody from down here a week point.
Hey.
But yeah, you should look into that. It's pretty cool. I mean, the way that was set up. I did a feature in 20. Let's see, would have been 2000. Might have been 2009 or 2010 that I did a feature on Randy Schwarzkopf after he won. After he was getting ready to go into Metal Mayhem, and he won the second time. He was preparing for it, and then he went in June and he won it.
Nice.
Steve,
Steve, are you okay? Did I lose you?
No,
did I upset you? I was just goofing around. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings.
I'm just sucking it up.
Steve, the DVD I was watching, the Buckeye Bash, it was one where Shay was actually running, and there was a red flag, and a guy hit her about 5 minutes into the red flag. I don't know if you ever saw the DVD or happened to be there, but that's the one that's the Buckeye Bash I was watching.
Yeah, Shay Dargo's Sam's son. He ran a Buick 225. It was all flat black. I paid him $100 to put Sugar Shack Racing on the trunk as a sponsorship because that was my race team back in the day, and that's how I stayed involved in the sport. A cool thing about that is they paid everybody who made it to the feature, but in order to get paid, you had to get to the feature. So Shay transferred and he qualified, but his car was junk. The transmission was blown. So he had somebody else that also qualified push him out to the track into the lineup so he could collect his winnings for at least being in the feature.
You're damn right.
Wow.
You're damn
cool.
right.
That's
Just push
cool.
me out there. You're damn
cool.
right.
Hey, Brandon, you ever have to do anything like that?
Like, push someone's car on the track?
Push a buddy out there just so you can make it to the line?
I'm trying to think if I had. I think I pushed a car on the track before at some point in time where their car died, and I just kind of yelled at them. I just said, "Hey, just put in neutral." So I pushed them out of the track, and basically because they're in my way, and I think I have some steering issues anyway. But any way I could help anyone out, that was what I always like to do. I know I've helped people out. And I've got countless help from other people,
What's your plan for this season? I mean, are you still going to be driving in 2014?
Probably not driving. I actually haven't driven. God, how long has it been? Trying to think. The last year I ran, I think was the first year they brought Spring Explosion to Georgetown, Illinois. So that's been several years.
Sure.
But I just been dip in here and there, help out on builds every once in a while with some people. But it's been a while. But I mean, I like to at least get out to a few demos every year. I've been with a lot of the trying to think. I'd like to get back involved a little bit more, whether it be back to officiating or maybe even announcing or whatever. I did do a season over at Cayuga officiating because I took a year off from driving after the birth of my daughter. But, I've kind of been out of it for a while, but I wouldn't mind getting back into it a little bit, but not just the financial end is the reason I haven't been in for several years.
Was it hard to get away from it? I mean, was it hard to step away?
Yes.
Yeah.
it was. I remember because I get the second Georgetown Spring Explosion. I decided to retire mainly because I was having some issues with the ex, and she was always on my case about spending time on weekends, running derbies and stuff, and it was just becoming a headache with her. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna walk away from this. I hated doing it, but I also work construction, which has been kind of spotty the last few years. So that kind of I think the thing that got me to finally hang it up was, look at all this money I'll save.
Yeah, I can't argue that.
Just take a loan out, Brandon. Just take out a loan, buy a bunch of derby cars, buy a good motor. Isn't that what everyone's doing?
I'd like to get back into it eventually. I think just when I'm in a little bit better financial state, I'd love to get back in. Thought about running trucks, but again, that's just another thing where it's become a dumpster fest, or at least around here anyway. I know a friend of mine, he was driving like a '79 Ford that I helped gut, and I think it's been run over 50 times by now. It just won't die.
5-0 or 1-5? Did you say 15?
What?
15 times or 50 times?
50. 5-0. Please.
Wow. Send me a picture of that. I'd like to see that thing.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see.
I'd like to see that.
How
That's
much?
cool.
How much is left of the original truck?
I wish I could run a car 50 times. That's awesome.
That is pretty funny. We hear a lot around here about guys that are going to get out of it for a year, and once they get out of it for a year, the hardest part is being out for that first year. After that, they don't miss it that much, and you don't see them come back.
I really have a tough time. I think about walking away sometimes, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't imagine doing it. When guys,
Really?
I really couldn't. I know that sounds like crazy, but I cannot not derby. I go a month, and I'm itching right now. I need to run right now. I've been building in my garage like crazy. I can't. It's tough. I can't believe taking a couple years off.
But he's going to get back into it. We certainly hope so. I mean, we're looking forward to hear more and more. Of guys that are talking about getting back into it. So we certainly hope that that things come together and you can get back in and you can give us a call again and we can talk a little bit more about it.
I hope I can get back in. I miss it. I'd probably be running like wire class or something because I wasn't out there buying a bunch of stuff. I was building it myself because I know I was building, shifters and transmission coolers and all this other stuff, and I was just building it in my apprenticeship class, which was kind of nice. So we could bring in projects to weld on and whatnot during my apprenticeship, so that was kind of nice. But yeah, all that stuff's gone. I think all I got left is my roof sign.
That's all you need, man.
Start there and work your way down.
And a battery. Oh, use that in a battery, and you're good.
Just need some hope and a helmet.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yep.
All it takes is
the helmet's all I got left.
all it takes is money, and they print that every day. Don't worry about it.
Right.
You find the right people, they can print it for you.
Well, what's wrong with going to a wire class? I mean, for someone to come out of retirement and think they're going to go on Blizzard Blast, yeah, that's crazy. But to come out and run a chain class, I mean, you could have fun with.
But could you do that? I mean, somebody's got the experience that Brandon has.
Yes.
Could you come out of retirement and run Blizzard Bash, given that you can go someplace like We Crash and find a lot of the information that you need, and you've still got contacts within the industry?
Yes, but he's going to have to spend a ton of money.
Yep.
Really, there's so much money.
Yeah, I mean, money notwithstanding, anybody who wants to compete at that extreme build level is going to have to spend money. So that out the door, you can come out of retirement in theory with that know-how, driving ability, the seat time that you alluded to earlier, and you could realistically go out there and compete.
Absolutely.
I think 10 years ago probably not, but nowadays you could because, like you say, you can talk to guys in California, Ohio, and get input from everybody. Yes, I think guys could do it right now. I hope some of them do.
I'm going to add a little bit more controversy, and I'm going to say that he'd even have a better chance because an old school driver is inherently more talented than some of these newbies.
Absolutely.
See, when you talk about newbies, do you consider me a newbie?
You started derbying around the same time I did, so no.
Thank you. I didn't know.
How about these young kids? I mean, they like you said earlier, like they think they could just go on and they read how to do it, and then they're like the baddest derby driver there ever was. And I've said it before on the show. Like I think that in order to become a good driver, you have to run some crap cars and make a crap car last.
Yes.
And then you learn how to drive. Anyone can take a good welded up car and go to the end because the car does all the work.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I kind of smile at those kids that are young with all that piss and vinegar because we kind of need that. I mean, when I was 16, 17, I remember telling Brett Relier I was going to junk him, and he showed me for the next 15 years I wasn't gonna. But but I enjoy. That's just how that age group is, anyways. I mean, they're going to be like that with anything. You guys wanna come at us? Come on. I mean, we'll take it.
Absolutely.
I don't mind that though. I don't mind. There's a lot of young kids.
It's funny.
Like that.
Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I mentioned the DVD series, the Big Money Derby, all that stuff, the ambassador program. How many of you guys, Chris, Josh, Brian, are you familiar with the Demolition Derby Figure 8 game on the computer?
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
I got a couple cars on there.
Do you?
I got an Imperial and a wagon.
Really?
Yeah.
That original game was launched in 2001 by John Arducci. He came to the IDDA forum and he said, I'm thinking about doing a derby game. I need some help. And he took submissions from people that were members of the forum of pictures of their cars and like their usernames and stuff and based the game on them. So like the original roster of AI drivers is a bunch of guys from IDDA, like Striss 141, I think was Steve Robinson from California. He was one of the board members for a while.
You talked about Alley Cat,
on the roster is Doug Alley in Maine. There's a bunch of different ones. Derby Dog that's on there is Frank Waller from Michigan, who was a Dent official for a long time. And that stuff all came from the IDDA forum.
That's I did not know that, but that's actually really cool.
Yeah,
that is actually really cool. But I know that there's a guy right now that's kind of revamping that game. I don't know if anybody's seen
extensively.
His name's Jordan. I think it's Giefer. I'm not sure how to say his last name, but he's on Facebook. If anyone wants to find him. But if you send him a picture, he'll post your car on there. I got an Imperial on there and a Chrysler wagon. I play it all the time. No, it's real cool.
I'll have to find that one. I've never played that.
You haven't?
Yeah.
Oh, man, you're the in-car view? I'll just do that all day. I can sit right at that computer all day and just drive.
Wearing your helmet at the same time.
You better believe it, Steve.
He actually turns the heat up in his house so that he sweats while he does it.
The humidifier is blowing steam on him.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are pretty close.
He actually has a margarita glass full of coolant. And he just kind of dumps in his lap every now and again.
Just for the smell, right?
Just get a little tiny taste on your lips.
That's awesome.
The future Mrs. Decker throws mud balls at him every now and then.
My kids do,
yeah. Telling him to get off the computer. Brandon, do you have Brandon? You got a car out there? No.
On the game, yes, I do.
Do you? That's cool. Good for you.
On the Big B on there, like number 150, I think it's like white and purple and pal. I think is what they gave me on there. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, it sure is.
No, that's
even
real cool.
back then, Fords were discriminated against.
Even then.
That's awesome.
That is
back
cool.
in the day. Were you running Ford Motors and Fords, or were you running Chevy or something? Yeah, Fords.
Yep.
289 or 302? What'd you run? 289s or 302s?
302s.
Nice.
I think I did have let's see what else I think I did have one other one. I think I ran a Suicide as well and a 77 Town Coupe, and I ran the stock motors in them, so a 462 and a 400. But everything else I ran 302s in.
That's cool.
Did you see our friend Sean Gokenauer down in Virginia scrapped his Lincoln this week?
The picture.
Did you see that thing?
I saw it.
That Galaxy that was behind that it was under it, I guess is the best way to say it. The Galaxy that was under it, that thing got wore out too. That thing was
the front of his Lincoln didn't look that bad, or was it?
No, he peeled the control arm off the right side. He's like,
junk it.
Yeah.
Really? When you're running with 500 horsepower, stuff like that happens on occasion.
Oh, definitely.
You break stuff.
Yeah, he had a whole post on there about everything that was wrong with it after the fact, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm not seeing it, but
I'd run it.
What do I know?
You never know. Also, people get sick of cars. I can't tell you how many times I looked at a car and it's like, get it out of here. That happens.
I did that once to the Christian New Yorker.
No, Steve, you keep running them?
I want to. If I had the choice, if I had the way to do it, I would have kept every car I ever ran. Because you just look at them and you just think of all the awesome stuff you did in that car. And
well, you're saying keep them somewhere in the house, not keep running them though.
No, just keep them parked out back so you can look at them.
That is cool.
You know what the funny thing is?
Like your personal museum, right?
I can't afford to do that, but that would be cool.
You know what the funny thing is now is you go down south and Richard Petty, one of the many things he's famous for is the Petty. It's like the ghost tour or something, and out behind his place, he's got cars from the 50s.
I posted
60s,
a picture of it.
And 70s, and there's a lot of guys that do it. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has got cars that's parked all over his property, and people laugh about it. But I mean,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that is the coolest.
In the Petty Enterprises, cool. the old Petty Enterprise. This is going back into the early '90s. The old Petty Enterprises Museum. There was a scrap square that they had gotten out of a crusher that had the door of the 43 wrapped around the outside.
I think I seen that.
You ever seen that picture?
Yeah. I think
we were there, and when I saw that, I wasn't really able to appreciate it even as much then as now, and to find that and get it and save it, it was pretty cool because that was a car that there was a whole story. Like they knew what car it was, and there was a little plaque that told about the car and stuff.
It was awesome.
It was pretty neat.
I love that old stuff. I put a picture on Facebook of the old Petty junkyard.
Yep.
It's awesome. I stared at that picture for like 10 minutes, just zooming in, looking at everything. Yep. I thought that was so cool. Yep. So cool. Yep.
I would always be into that, but I was living with my parents for most of my Derby, and they weren't really a fan of having numerous cars sitting up.
My dad used to threaten to sell them while I was at school When you get home from school, these are going to be gone.
Yeah,
I'll beat you up, Dad, if you do that.
You told me that story coming back from Kansas.
My dad used to threaten every day.
Back when you told me that story back when you used to talk to me.
Yeah, well.
Don't worry, you guys are going to get all.
You're too stressed out lately. I'm trying to calm you down, give you space.
Hey, Chris, I'm taking a look at the chat room in fingerlakes1.tv. Got a pretty full room here tonight. This looks like a pretty popular topic.
Awesome.
Hey, everybody out there.
Donald Castavant's on there as
hey,
always. Steve Sr. popped in for the first time. He's watched them usually after the fact, but now he's watching live and he's in the chat room.
Nice to see you,
I believe Joe Johns Jr., who used to be from Muncie, was like a neighbor of Sam Dargo's. I think he lives in Florida now. He's on here. Tom Woodbury from Vermont's on here.
Tom Woodbury. Tom Woodbury got a real nice sign for Christmas. I was happy for him.
He got a really nice sign for Smash Empire Media. And there's also another viewer that is anonymous. I don't know who it is, but yeah, pretty full room tonight.
Is the person logged in under the username anonymous?
No, it's FL1 TV viewer numbers.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's Steve. That's Steve Senior that doesn't like the pussy bars, right?
That's right. You don't like this pussy bars.
All right, I just wanted to be straight on.
Did you guys see on Facebook there was like 3 people that commented on that? It made me laugh every time. Yeah, a couple people commented on it.
My old man posted one time on IDDA Digest before it was a forum, and he just went off and he said, "You know what?" He said, "I must have been, building derby cars when you guys were all in tank school, because this is bullshit." He's like, "I drive derby cars. You guys run tanks."
I can speak for my hometown. We went a lot of years with no cages, with a 275-foot track, and just looking back, I mean, it's a wonder that nobody did really get hurt. I mean,
yeah, but it's different times. They were on stock gears with junkyard motors. I mean,
but still, you come 275 feet in a Chevy wagon and drive somebody in the passenger's door at 20.
I agree. But
I mean, that's.
Troy Fair last year, 2 years ago, run no cages, and they had a guy go to the hospital. They had him dragged out of it.
So
it's not. There. It ain't the old days. It is not the old days.
But the guys at Troy don't.
Maybe get Sean on the line, maybe. And
you want me to try and get Sean?
We'll see if we can reach him. I don't know if he's got service or not.
Okay.
The guys at Troy don't seem to mind getting their doors pushed in the middle of the cars. Like, they let it happen.
They enjoy it, I guess. I guess it's a rush to taste someone else's bumper up against your helmet.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy that.
No, I the one time I went down there, those guys would just park and let you drive them in the passenger doors.
I don't get it.
No,
I don't get that down there. It's like the part of being a man down there. It's like, you got to get full tracked in the passenger door. Bring
Rite of passage.
Yeah. I'm not interested, guys.
Brandon, we appreciate, I'm glad Steve was able to get you in touch with us, and we certainly appreciate you taking some time out of your night to hang out with us and answer some of our questions about, the history of IDDA and where things are for you. And we certainly hope to hear from you getting into the car here in the near future.
I hope so.
Well,
thanks again, Brandon.
Get back.
Well, we keep us posted on that. Keep in touch with Steve, and we appreciate you coming and hanging out with us here on the crash course. We're going to try and catch up with one of the boys out in Washington. Sounds like we might be able to have some service with him too.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us,
man.
Take it easy, man.
Hey, no problem.
Bye now. There
so
goes Brandon
it turns out
Hayes.
the anonymous viewer that I didn't know is actually my cousin Larry Bucknam. He's logged in to say hi too. So.
Steve, sometimes I read through your threads and I get lost which Bucknam is talking because I see Bucknam, Junior,
like
Senior, Larry, and then I'm like, who's talking now?
You guys ever watch the old TNN shows when they did the Big E in Massachusetts?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
So there was 5 of us there, and they picked me as one to watch for my heat. They picked my cousin George as one to watch for his heat, and we all qualified for the feature. And going into the feature, all the commentators were saying, it's the Bucknams against the rest of the bunch, and if the Bucknams don't win this thing, the sun might not come up over New England tomorrow. It was pretty funny.
Who won it? Finish that
Darren
story.
St. Jean won that show. My dad got 3rd.
Nice. Steve, it's kind of cool. I've only met you in the last couple of years. I didn't know your family history, but it's really awesome how you started doing that stuff really before. Like, now it seems like a lot of guys are helping each other out, but you've been helping people out forever.
Did you know that,
I love that
Steve Buckman, I want to make sure I get this story straight, it was Steve Buckman Sr., right, that when God was learning to drive, that car that he had, Steve Sr. derbied that car. He derbied. That was the story.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, Steve. I got the story wrong. Steve's dad derbied Jesus' road test car. That's what it was.
That's true.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
And it was and by the way, it was a 74 Malibu.
Best demolition derby car ever existed.
Nice. That's awesome.
That's cool, Steve.
We got we were able to get a hold of Sean Peace, so we welcome Sean in from Washington. Glad you could take some time out and hang out with us, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem.
He's
at all.
old. He's an old man.
Steve Bucknam's
Watch
Steve.
that young punk.
Yeah.
Nothing like a coast-to-coast fight.
So must be you can hear Steve okay too.
Yep, I can hear him.
Good. Tell us a little bit about some of your experiences with IDDA and the way things were with the Demolition Derby world before social media got so popular, things like Facebook and WeCrash.
Oh, well, back when we were first running, you only knew about it because you went to the local track.
Mm-hmm.
And we ran around. We ran about 10 years before we even had internet.
Right.
And got internet, and my dad actually found out about the IDDA through Sam. Somehow found it and got us in with that, and that changed things drastically. That was about the time you started seeing guys travel, and Stevie came out here, and I went out there and crashed a few rigs here and there and had a good old time.
That is one of the things that I remember from growing up was I always heard about derbies in Chemung County and Ontario County Fairgrounds, but those are the only other derbies in the world to me. These drivers,
right.
that was it. Like
Right.
once got outside, and it's like it never even occurred to me that there were derbies going on in other parts of the state, let alone in other
All
states.
over the country.
You didn't hear about Weedsville when you were a kid?
No,
my
not
first
much.
experience
A little.
was actually, I was probably 6 or 8 years old and went back to visit family in Iowa, and we go out to the state fair out there, and they're crashing cars, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. And come home and looked into it, and we do things a little different out here, but we got into it that way, and then family grew through step-family and stuff, and next thing you know, to take our frustrations out on each other, we're out at the track taking each other's butt.
That sounds like fun.
Now, Sean, are you still derbying to this day? Do you still run?
I do not run anymore. I got in an accident about 12 years ago that basically the doctor told me that I better not be doing that stuff anymore if I wanted to walk again.
Yikes.
That sucks.
Do you still follow derbying out there?
I watch it a little bit. I still know a few of the guys, but I actually kind of turned into an import tuner and had my fun with cars that way more than anything else now.
I'm kind of interested to know. You guys are like on the opposite side of the country for us, total opposite. What's kind of getting run out there?
It's the same cars as always. There's a lot of it. They're running the 80s and early 90s crap now. But anybody that's leading any competition still got old Impalas stashed away.
Right.
They're dominating the track up there with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of name drivers up that direction too. Are you familiar at all with there's a group that runs up that way called the Page Posse?
That one I don't know the name of. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, they had a derby. It was an invitation only derby. There's a local golf course up there, and at the end of the year is one of their get-togethers. They usually have a rodeo. Well, this year, this past summer, instead of having a rodeo, they decided they wanted to have a demolition derby, and they invited 15 drivers or so, and they brought them all in. Paul Twitt was involved with it, and they had a derby at the golf course, basically.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that was, and they're going to do it again. It sounded like it went over pretty well. Gosser Ranch, I believe, was the name of the golf course.
Yeah, that sounds like a Eastern Washington deal then.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah, the other side of the mountains, that sounds like something would be up over there, over here on the west side, and the wet side in Seattle. You wouldn't hear that, but it sounds like a blast. I'd almost be willing to go try again or something like that.
just to tear up the golf course.
How about cars out there?
Exactly.
Is it tough to find cars out there, or is it pretty easy to find cars out in Washington?
I can still find them. I drive around enough as it is, that I still see big mid-70s Impalas floating around all over the place out here.
No way. We don't see that around.
No.
They're not on any roads around here.
How about Mopars? Is there any Mopars out there?
Right now, within a mile of my house, I could find at least 2 rust-free 75s.
Must be nice.
When I went to
Now,
Sean's
whether
place
they'll
in
sell them is another story.
Right.
Right.
Right. That's true.
I went to Sean's place in 2001 and then again in 2002. He had a yard full of cars, and he had several GM sedans, several GM wagons, Suicide Lincoln, a couple of Imperials, and
Magic word.
apparently stuff doesn't rust there.
That was kind of my question. It's wet, but does it rust?
All his stuff is nice.
Depending on where you pick it up from. If you're right out on the coast, then it'll be bad. But in where I'm at, I'm not inland actually, but I'm right on the water. But I don't worry about rust that much around here.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I can buy a car and store it, depending on where you store it, obviously. But if you could put it on decent ground to begin with, I can have one sit for 10 years and not hardly lose anything to rust.
If I leave one for 2 seasons, it's going to the scrap yard. Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's all. I wish I could. Sometimes I think about just taking the kids and like going somewhere because I would be in heaven over there. Still finding 75 Impalas on the side of the road.
But you got to bring a trailer. We learned this when we went to Topeka.
We're doing it when we go to Kentucky.
Yes.
No, I know. I already set it up. We have to pick a car up on the way home. It's already set. It's a done deal.
Is it a Mopar at least?
Yes.
All right.
74.
Guys, Sean out in Washington, when he was running the Evergreen Speedway, and that's where he brought me to. And they run a whole different style of derby out there. They do like circle track racing with derby cars on pavement, and then it's like all smash to pass. And then they have heats where pretty much you can run as many heats as you want to. And then when it gets down to the feature, it's like any car that ran that night gets to go to the feature. And it starts off as circle track racing and then ends up as a derby. It's pretty cool.
No, I've seen out there a place called Kamas, I think, or Kamas. I don't know how you say Kamas. Is that in that area? I think I've seen something like.
Yeah, that's down in Oregon, actually.
Is that the style that he's talking about? I've watched some of those videos. It actually looks fun.
Well, that's real similar. I've seen some of it, but it's basically, we actually go out and chime in like a normal race car, and run. Was supposed to be no contact trophy dashes, but you know how derby drivers are.
Sure.
And then we go out and run, like Steve was saying, we run actual smash pass heat races. Anything goes, pretty much. And 8 to 10 laps, and you win. I think they're up to 100 to win and 50 for second place now for just winning the regular races like that.
Now, if
now it's anything over 25 cars, they'll start out as a roundy round smash to pass. When they get down to 10 cars, they throw the last 10 in the middle. If they've got less than 25 guys show up for the night, then it's just all one big circle pointing at each other, just like back home, and go pound on each other till there's only one running.
Nice.
Wow.
I don't know how I feel about that driving around in the circle thing.
It was awesome.
Great.
No, it'd be fun. It'd be fun for something different.
And stuffing somebody into the wall is absolutely fantastic.
You go into turn 4 just knowing someone's going to drive up your butt.
Yeah.
It's like, it was pretty hairy.
Nerve-wracking. Yeah, that's fun. That looks cool.
What kind of tires were you running then? I mean, you had to be running some pretty decent rubber on there to get.
Well, for the heat races and stuff, we were usually running either a track tire or I'd be running 60 series rubber, stuff like that, so I could get around the corners pretty good.
Right.
Because I want to be fast. And then come feature time, I'd swap over to the big stuff you guys run, 6, 8, 10 ply mutters, whatever I could get my hands on.
Right. That's awesome.
Imagine one of those round-year-round races now with a guard motor you can turn 85.
Man, that'd be fun as hell. Oh, that'd be fun as hell.
You'd be running 90, 100 mile an hour down the backstretch.
Oh, man, that'd be great. 7,500
With the crazy
RPM.
cages and everything. Oh, my
fun.
God.
Now, back then, were they rolling a lot of people over? When you guys started doing them corners, I'm sure you guys were rolling a lot of guys over. Was that happening back then?
Some of it was, but it wasn't really quite as often because the main track that does it up here, up in Evergreen, is actually a really flat 1/5 oval.
Okay.
So to get somebody flipped, you've got to hit them just right.
Yeah.
It was a little more common back when I was running that. There's a place called Spanaway that's no longer, the track's not even there now.
Oh, man.
But it was a quarter-mile banked oval. And literally, I had an old 75 Cordoba with a really nice 318 in it that I was doing 80 miles an hour down the front straightaway. And
Did you leave this
with the wind in your hair? That's awesome.
What's left of his hair
At that time, too, I was 35 years old. I didn't care much at that time, maybe even only 30. And I had that wild bug. And when you'd hook somebody coming out at like turn 4, I'd take my passenger headlight, hook it into their driver's tail light, and send them backwards into the wall. And the guy quit for the night, usually.
That's
had enough, I'd beat him up.
That's NASCAR wrecking right there.
Yeah, right. That's awesome.
That's Dale Earnhardt Sr. going for a win at Bristol.
That's awesome.
It's exactly what it's like. It's like, okay, we're going to send you away.
Chris.
Yeah.
Sean was also one of the guys that was part of the IDDA and also part of the Yahoo groups. Matter of fact, I don't remember which one I met him on first, but we did
IDDA
a couple of charity
first,
heats through the Yahoo groups to raise money for Make-A-Wish. And Sean flew out from Washington to Cayuga to run a car at the charity heat. We had basically like an all-star heat at Cayuga where they do the battle at the border now. We had people from all over the country that flew in for this Yahoo Group's charity heat, and Sean was part of it. It was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Sean, can I ask a quick question? When you flew out there and you get to Steve's and you see their cars, how they're built, you go to their Derby.
Oh, God.
No, I'm just going to ask him a question.
I gave him a pink car to drive.
No. I better not.
When I came out for years, when I went, the first one was a crash for a cause. We went out to Illinois. And go out there and see all these rednecks out there that they're running welded and stuff that there's no way I'd get away with running out here. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're up against. And I was in a pretty stock build, an 83 Buick. I don't even remember what, basically an Impala, but a Buick.
Yeah.
And here I go out, and there's Sam in a 75 wagon. And at one point during the Derby, I went nose to nose with him 2 or 3 times. And at the end of it, he's coming up, he goes, "You're freaking nuts." It was a little bit more than that, but he goes, "You're crazy. Why are you going nose to nose?" I said, "I'm here to put on a show for the kids, guys. That's all this is all about, this trip."
Well, when you got all the way to the East Coast, did you think the East Coast was farther progressive than on the cars, or were they behind times? What did you think when you got out here? Or were you guys kind of in the same spot, kind of building cars the same?
It was similar, but just enough different. We still use chain, and I still think most of them do up here instead of number 9 wire.
Yep.
And you get away with, there's a lot more welding out there because of the lack of cars. I understand it.
Yep.
They don't allow, still to this day, out here, hardly any welding. And, weld your bumpers, minor patch welding, but if you go in with a full frame weld, and there is no full weld derbies out here, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's surprising. You'd think you'd get at least some of it. Some guys wanting to build more.
Well, the Cali guys do, but for some reason up here in the Northwest, it just never really
caught on.
Got on outlaw type stuff. They tried it several times, and then nobody'd ever show up. It's too much work to build a car.
Yeah, well, I believe in that too.
I'm finding more and more that outlaw. I mean, outlaw is an even more relative term than I thought that it was. After we went and we saw those plated tanks at Blizzard Bash, different parts of the country have a different interpretation of outlaw. Like, you look at what the cars that they run at Hartford in some parts of the country, that's an outlaw car.
Absolutely. Well, look at us, our stock car debate. 100 guys think stock is totally something different, They could be 100 different things.
Even stuff back where Steve's at, when I went out and ran with him, and I'm in a full-on Imperial heat in a 73 Buick, it's like, really?
You'll be all right. You'll be okay.
Just hold it on the boards. Everything's good.
Yeah.
When I was putting Sean's car together, I didn't have enough paint, so I mixed everything I had together, and it came out like Pepto-Bismol
down
paint.
the street when we built the car. A 79 wagon, me and the Navy, or that 73 Buick, and then nothing but Imperials in this heat. It's like,
wow.
You really expect me to do this?
And you put them in a pink. You put them in a pink one and in an Imperial. Great friend, Steve.
And it was really rusty.
And the guy come all the way across the country. You're a great buddy.
I had in my yard. I had a 76 deuce and a quarter that was pre-ran and it looked really, really rough. And I had this fresh 73 LeSabre that was really rusty and pink. And I said, you can pick either one. You can run my car or this car. And he chose the LeSabre. I would have picked the deuce, but he chose the LeSabre, and he got down to 6th or 7th out of 20 cars in an all Imperial heat.
Oh, that's cool.
And had the back bumper packed up into the back seat around the gas tank, and the nose was clean. And one thing that was different is he's used to, you have to take the car you came with. That's what he runs out there. Out here, if he'd have just qualified, he could have borrowed someone else's car for the feature.
Right.
And he didn't know that, so he was trying to save the nose. And if he just spaced the damage out a little more, he probably would have made the feature in that thing.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
You didn't tell him that?
He's a good friend.
I didn't even think about it, because to me that's how derbies were.
You gave him a
I just assumed that everybody knew that.
That's that's funny.
Total difference in the way things happen at different outlets, and it's like, okay, whatever. I had a blast. I enjoyed it, and I wouldn't give it up for anything.
Probably
And
would have had more fun in the
we've been
feature.
friends for 10, 12, 13 years. Loving every minute of it.
That's cool.
That's cool.
That is awesome.
Can't argue with that, I suppose. As long as you had fun.
I wish I was.
Oh, I sure wasn't doing it to make money, guys.
No. But that long ago, guys were sharing cars all the time. I mean, back in 15 years ago, it was nothing for just to say, hey, hop in that one, hop in that one.
But didn't the price of cars change all that?
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden, those things are worth their weight in gold.
But I think we really, me personally, I missed the heyday of Derby, and I started derbying in 1998, which was right here at the end of the IDDA. 'Cause, you know, I really think that the years before that, the 90s, were really, to me, the best years of Demolition Derby. To me, the true Demolition Derby guys were derbying in the 90s, and I miss that.
Well, I mean, you look back.
I missed the late 80s, early 90s myself.
Yeah.
You know, back then, my very first Derby was 1983.
No, I was 1 years old.
I started on that little 1/5 oval we told you about.
I told you he's
We were
old.
3 cars wide, bumper to bumper. And they got us on a slow roll, and they dropped the green flag as I got in front of the flag man. I got control of my car coming out of turn 2.
Nice.
It was nuts.
That's
like,
awesome.
Hey, just let go of the steering wheel because you ain't got control of it anyway. Just let them push you around.
That's awesome.
That was definitely the good times though. This last weekend we dropped a car off down to Mark Benjamin's, and when I first met Mark and started going down there, they still had all the old iron, and where they put their cars, you know, there was I've seen pictures. There was 100 Mopars, shockers, just as far as the eye could see, and GMs. And you
Now you just laugh when you go back out.
yeah,
back there.
Mark and I got talking, and he goes, "Can you imagine?" He goes, "You know how many pointy New Yorker bumpers we get one run, throw them in the scrap." And you know, I said the same thing. I mean, they like 100 shockers. You know, 100. I mean, realistically, 100 shockers in this picture.
Aaron Bunce used to tell me he used to go buy 5 shockers for $50 each at some auction by his house and drive them home one by one. I mean, the stories of how derbying is so much more fun. I would have had so much more fun 15 years ago. I mean, I love it now, but I wish I could go back.
But isn't everybody that lives in the current era always looking?
We had 35 cars, and we were going to the towing auctions 4 or 5 miles down the road, and we'd buy 2, 3, 4 cars at every other auction and drive them back to my grandma's house. So I'd stockpile everything.
I love those stories. I mean, because I would kill for that. I mean, to just.
But isn't everybody in the current era always looking back and saying, "I wish that I had that"?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, tell me I'm wrong. That give it 15 years when there's all these 6-cylinder cars bombing around the place, and they're going to be like, "Boy, I wish I lived in the day when all they ran was tilted Crown Vics."
No, because
absolutely. No, you're right. They're
all going to be.
It's a sad day. They're
all going to be driving their Luminas with Dodge, or Dodge or Chevy truck bumpers on the front of them, going, "These are the baddest things ever. We could junk our Crown Vics with them."
I hope they're running Dodge Magnums with those bumpers on the front of them.
Did you plan on still having yours then?
No, I've got an Avenger now. I had two. I had 2 of those Magnums,
That's
and man, I was every time I drove in that thing, I'm thinking, boy, one of these days, everybody's gonna wish they had these, and I had 2.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to live in the era when the late 50s. Up into the mid 60s when all those the Imperials and the Newports and stuff, those were on the road. Those weren't driving. The only time I see those cars is with glass out of them, other than when I walk through my front yard. The only time I see them is when they're stripped out and they're going to be destroyed. Mm-hmm. And just to see all those cars on the road.
Driver's license, those are the cars we were buying for $100 as drivers, just to drive around and have your buddies with you.
Yep.
Well, there's a lot of room in those. You can fit a 30 pack on the dash of a Newport.
Around an old New Yorker.
Oh yeah,
have no problems with it. So that's when we'd buy them, and they were $50 or $100 because they were gas hogs.
Yep.
So, late 70s.
In the late 70s and early 80s, our hometown fair, they used to provide feature cars. Mitchell's Junkyard out by me.
Right, yeah, I do remember that.
They would.
Well, I don't remember it. I remember
they'd run the heats, and then everybody that got qualified would go to the judges' stand, and you'd pull numbers out of a hat.
Get out of here.
The number you pulled was the car that you ran. They supplied the feature cars.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Boy, that's
There's
cool.
a lot of places that ran derbies that they just paid you for showing up. They said, "Oh, thanks for coming. Here's some gas money."
No.
That would be awesome.
When my dad was derbying, he got that a lot at speedways because they basically just treated it as an attraction.
Right.
So there wasn't there wasn't a whole bunch of prize money involved. You got a trophy or the checkered flag, but you showed up. They said, "Thanks for coming. Here's some cash."
Oh,
and
that's
then you went
cool.
out and drove a derby.
Man, see back.
My stepdad was running in the 60s, and there was a dealership out here that would call him up, give him a car, and then he'd show up the track with it. The track would pay him, so he got a free car, got to go run, and back in those days, of course, they were drinking in the pits all the time anyway, so all this was a freaking party, and it was the way they did it.
That's awesome. That is, see, I mean, how cool would it have been back then? I got to drop thousands of dollars to pull out on the track.
You ain't kidding.
Poor
You know?
Josh. We feel for you.
Dude, I mean, seriously. Imagine how many cars I would run. If it was 1990, I would run 40 cars. I mean, I would run every night.
Would you run this year? You run 12 or 13? 12 or 13 times.
No, more than that.
But his New Yorker, would you run that 6 or 7 times?
Yes.
You ran Brett's Cadillac twice.
3 times.
You ran your Imperial 4 times.
Yes.
I mean,
I had another Imperial I run 3 times.
Which I'm not knocking them. I mean, you got to be a good builder to have cars last that long. But it's not like back then when you went, you take a fresh car everywhere, and it was just.
But
it
that's
was
I
a
like
day of
fresh
plenty,
cars.
man.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't like
would
running
love to have a
pretty
fresh car.
Robbie Brown's dad used to tell me if they had spark plugs bad, they used to junk it. I mean, that's the days I wish I lived.
Those are days of plenty.
Oh man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like Josh and I were talking before the show started, and when we took that car down to Mark's, he had a Crown Vic off a frame, and I'd never seen one off, so I went in to look at some of the things you got to do to them, change the rear end and stuff, and the suspension and this and that, and I got looking at it, and Mark's telling me all the stuff that you had to do, and I'm going, I can quit spending all this money on old iron, and I can spend less on a Ford, but then you got to put twice the time into it to run.
And you're not a guy that really wants to put that kind of work into a car.
No, you
Not
don't.
really,
You don't. But Josh Wagner, Josh Wagner, way out in Kansas, I joke with him sometimes because he had a very high end motor for sale, expensive motor, and I said, "How do you afford to buy this motor?" And he had a great answer. He said, "I'm not the dummy spending $1,500 on a shocker," which was a great answer to me because, you know what? If I didn't have to buy 3 of those this year, I could have had your motor.
Absolutely.
It was a great answer.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Wow, look at the time. I can't believe that.
Good episode.
Yeah.
I like talking about this.
We're right at the limit. We gotta get our stuff packed up and get out of the way. The sauce is coming up here in about an hour.
Good story, Sean. Like talking to you.
Wrong
Man.
one. There we go.
Thanks for having me, and anytime, guys.
Yeah, we look forward to catching up with you again. You got more good stories, I'm sure. Just by hearing the ones that that you shared with us tonight, I'm sure that there's more good stories to come. We got to hear more of those.
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff out there if you get to talking about it.
We look forward to it. Sean, we appreciate you joining us here tonight.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good night.
Thanks again, Sean.
There goes Sean, and we've also got the one and only Steve Bucknam hanging in there with us with his checkerboard background.
Steve, can you text me Jim Mann's number?
Yeah, I can do that.
I haven't forgotten.
Check this out, Chris. Here you go.
What you got? Look at that.
Oh, look at that.
Let me get this down here so we can see it. Look at that.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Hey, nice
This is,
Smashed Empire film shirt, too, by the way.
Yeah, it looks
This is
good.
an old school shirt one of my buddies from Brookville, Pennsylvania had put together. This was actually one of Matt Davis's shirts. Matt Davis, he was Dr. Demo 14 on IDDA. He passed away a while back, but he gave me that shirt in 2003 when I ran down there. I've held on to it ever since.
Cool.
That's cool. Very cool. Well, Steve, what do we got next week? I can't remember what we got next week. You back here next week? You gonna hang out with us or what? You gonna take...
I'll be here as long as the fans will keep me.
Wait a
All
minute.
right.
Is it next week's the big announcement show, isn't it?
Could be.
What announcement?
The big announcement that you and Chris have been seeky
The
about.
big one that everyone wants to tune in for. Make sure they're here.
Because next week is
Someone fill me in.
next week is well, Pete Hansen's gonna be here.
Oh.
Tori Schuette's gonna be on the show, I believe.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
one of the teammates is gonna be on as well from out in the Midwest. with Pete.
Next week we may or may not find out how busy our summer's going to be.
And Brian you're bumped from next week, right?
That'd be no. I think you are.
Probably.
You guys can both be. I don't care. We can figure out a way.
I'm not missing that one.
Why?
I'm not missing that
So
one.
you do know something then.
Everybody tune in next week.
So you know-
Everybody tune in next week.
The question is are you personally going to pick Pete up in Philadelphia and drive it
Absolutely fine.
You're gonna pick him up? Yeah. He told me he would drive up. He goes, I have no problem being here. But he keeps every time he messes me, he keeps saying the 13th, and I'm pretty sure that we had booked it for the 3rd. So I got to go. And
He
look at
did
this.
say the 13th to me.
He said the 13th,
and
but
so
I thought it was the first week of the year.
Debivec's coming up also with him.
As far as I know.
Yeah, they're telling me the 13th. They just said it to me. You better check with that.
I'm gonna make sure
that'll
we
be a
have
good
schedule.
one. Next week will be a good one. Pete's good to listen to.
Not for nothing, but I don't know if I've ever seen Pete Hansen go an hour without smoking. So
He can smoke up here. I don't care.
No, he can't. I'm not breathing that in.
Well,
I have to keep this.
Yeah,
Healthy.
smoking.
Yeah.
I don't want to smell that from here.
Yeah, see the difference is Josh, your body is a temple, and Steve Bucknam's body is an amusement park.
You must be this tall to ride.
That's awesome. Ah, cool. Next week's gonna be a good one too. Then.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I don't even know. I've completely lost track of what the schedule in January is going to be. With the last 2 weeks have been absolutely hectic, and we got more cool stuff coming.
Derby banquet. No one forget Derby banquet.
Yep,
There's some
15th.
talk, real quick. There's some talk of at the Derby banquet a poker game for a Chrysler Imperial. I just happened to hear it. There's a lot of people in the works. I hope this happens. Everybody will have a buy-in. Winner gets a Chrysler Imperial. We'll see
What
if
am
it
I going
happens.
to do with a Chrysler Imperial when I win this?
You're going to leave it at my house, buddy.
You're going to hire me to drive it. I'll make you proud.
And I'll build it at my house, and you can come down and run it.
You guys.
I'm winning that thing.
What day is it? Where is it?
I don't know that.
Right, it's February 15th.
February
15th,
15th.
Treadway and Owego.
Right.
Okay.
See,
$25.
Brett's not going to like you anymore. You only got
Unless
a
you
half
show
out
up,
there.
I'm the one that brought it
$40
up.
at the door.
Nah, it's always a good time. Make sure you get there.
Absolutely.
All right, we really do have to get out of here because those guys are going to be beating on the door here. Steve, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
See you next
Thank you,
week, buddy.
guys.
We'll catch up with you
Steve.
soon, okay? Thanks. And for Brian Tompkins, for Josh Decker.
Happy New Year.
I'm Chris Marquardt. We appreciate you joining us on this edition of the Crash Course. We're going to see you back here again next week.
Beep, beep, beep.